Welcome back.
Yeah. So we're going to start a game show or podcast series where, you put random people in breakout rooms and then you close them. So everyone's in mid-sentence,
And like name the end of that sentence.
Yeah, exactly.
What were they going to say? I love that.
I wanted more time.
Well, I always want more time for dialogue, but
yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, the clock is sometimes controlling.
Yeah.
So I wanted to open up to reflection. Anything you said or heard during this time, this is for everyone, that you would like to share, and then open it up to Q&A for you both, Augustina and Jamel. So first, let's talk about anything that resonated from these small breakouts that you want to share with the larger group. Feel free to unmute yourself. Thank you, Vic.
Go for it. Don't be shy. I got 8 minutes.
Bridget wrote, talk about the power of stories and truth-telling.
Yeah, and I think especially going to that question of how do we prepare particularly white mentors who might be from more of like a middle class background, just the power of stories engaging with place, especially our region, our state, like the history of our region that, I'm finding many students, especially white students at Western Washington University, like they're not familiar with those stories. And, there's such power in that. So that's something that we've been engaging with, and it sounds like other folks are trying to do that work too.
That's dope. Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah, we ran out of room really fast, or time really quickly in our room. But I wanted to say, Robin, I loved your comment about just, really being upfront with our mentors ahead of time and asking those questions that will reveal potential biases that are out there, so that you really, can screen through them and decide whether they're workable or whether that, you just cut them out of the system because, they're not ready for a mentorship. But just really addressing them up front, I think, is really important.
Thank you, Patsy.
I want to just say one fun thing we're doing as a staff too, that I didn't have time to share really, but we start every staff meeting now with a JEDI, it's called, as Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusivity. And we take turns as a staff just finding some interesting article or reading or whatever, YouTube video, whatever. And we all look at it ahead of time, and we spend a good 20 minutes minimum at our staff meeting, just everybody sharing their thoughts about it. And it's been really fun and educational for everybody.
That's awesome. I love that acronym, Patsy, JEDI. For all you Star Wars buffs, I hope it's okay if they steal that, Patsy.
For sure. Go for it.
Yeah.
Love to see it out there.
No doubt. Shout out Mace Windu. Yeah. I see Jamel talked about never know who's available, reaching out. That's true. You never know who's free. I love this. Any other reflections that you want to share? And if not, let's ask some questions to Jamel and Augustina. I know Robin's got a question. I see it in your face, Robin. You can't try to hide from me.
Tough questions. Come on now. Now, it's hard because we all have different kinds of programs too. And mine is, my program, the staff is right here in this chair. I am the staff. And I've been working in social justice for decades. I hate to be able to say decades, but that's the reality. And I guess it's been so sticky lately with all the political layers, on top of what we already deal with as running mentor programs. So it's like, where do you even begin with the questions, James? I think that's it. There's just so many, like, because I'm very straightforward and interpersonal. So I get into these tough conversations with people. The questions, I ran a program for juvie for 17 years, and one of the biggest mistakes on the paperwork from the probation officers was race. So when I had that tough conversation, Patsy, with the family and asked about, I said, look, the mentor is Mexican. Are there issues with that? And the mother's like, his father's Mexican. And I'm looking at the paperwork and it's like Pacific Islander, Asian, so it's obvious even on the documentation. I talked to my supervisor. I said, the stats are off for your youth because your probation officers are all white and they're too scared to ask these questions. Like, how do you identify? And so sometimes you got to really scrape down to the basics before you even get into these tough conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I really try to, I would say, how do you really have these conversations with mentors who are coming in to get beyond the patent questions and the patent answers that are politically correct, to get to their truth?
That's a great question. How do you get past the surface? I love that. Yeah. Jamel, Augustina?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, mentor recruitment, and this is something, we're doing a lot of and opening the doors for now, but I think it comes with kind of constant contact with your mentors and thinking about them as a cohort in the same way that you're thinking about your young people as a cohort that you're tracking and they're matriculating through a process, thinking about the pool of mentors or that you're recruiting with as going through that same process, because that is actually what it'll require and what it'll require for them to actually unpack. And so it is a sort of thing where you don't want them actually to start in the same place where they end up. And it may be through the process of interacting with your young people that they'll start to ask questions about themselves. But I think it is, like, we want to engender the kind of environment with our pool of mentors where they get like, we're communicating with them like via newsletter, et cetera, but where they get like a weekly update and a weekly newsletter. I think this thing or this idea of bringing in concepts like Jedi as part of your group meetings, and where you're actually opening space to talk about that, because they probably are not getting a space to really talk about that in their day jobs. And so there, it is an actual place and space to push the needle with your mentorship cohort, but treating them as a cohort.
I also think it's important to think about the asset-based approach. What James had spoken about earlier is just thinking about how we're often taught that communities of color and folks that we're unfamiliar with are coming from a place of deficit, a place of not having, and that's an assumption that we make when we walk into a room with people of color we may not know. We're there because we're here to offer something to them. We're already thinking they're in this kind of deficit place, and particularly when thinking about young people, I think that it's important to really use an asset-based approach around thinking about what are they bringing into the room that you don't know about and that you can learn from, that you can, then also the strengths that they have in their communities, which may not look the same as a more affluent community, but there are so many resources, so many bright spots that you can find and highlight. And I think that that's often a good entry point to begin to dispel some of the stereotypes that folks place on people in the beginning, and to kind of pull back a couple layers to really be able to see folks for who they are and what they're bringing to the table.
I love that. I think that's such a great way to end our session. Look for the bright spots, assets. We all need to be searching for something positive in our life right now. And the youth, as is often said, are the truth. Let's do that. Let's focus on the bright spots. Thank you, Augustina. Thank you, Jamel Mims, for joining us. I love you both dearly. I wouldn't be here without y'all. So
Thanks, James. Love you too.
shout,
The love is real. You already know.
all day. Thanks, Danny. Thanks for people. Isaiah for joining us from the East Coast.
Danny, Siobhan,
Yes,
Hannah.
Siobhan, whole crew. We crewed out.
Yes.
We'll be doing these sessions frequently. The next one will be, Vic and I will confer, hopefully this in 2 weeks. And the next focus will be mental wellness. We'll often talk about mental health disparities. So we're going to focus on mental wellness and what that looks like. So appreciate you both. Thank you all for coming. Have a lovely Thursday.
Bye.